AP Psych, this is Unit 7, Lecture 6. It's all about stress and coping. And quite frankly, it's not too stressful of a lecture because a lot of the ideas, to me at least, make a lot of sense and are easy to follow. So hopefully you agree with me and don't get stressed out. Right, here are some of our learning targets. And let's get into it. So stress is the process by which we appraise and cope with environmental threats and challenges. So whether it's real, like you really do have 5 tests this week and you can't seem to juggle it all, or it's perceived where you're looking into the future thinking, how will I ever handle college? It sounds so hard. So whether it's real or perceived doesn't really matter. What we're focusing on in this topic is how does stress threaten your well-being? Whether it's real or just in your mind, it's still affecting your behavior, your cognition, your emotions, and that's really what we want to dive into. So to define the difference between a couple terms, there's a stressor and then there's a stress reaction. The stressor is the stressful stimulus or the event that is causing the reaction. It's the thing causing the stress. So it's a condition demanding adaptation, meaning it's the situation that's forcing you to respond to it. Then the stress reaction is that response. It's the physical and mental changes that occur because of that stressor. So whether it's the actions you take or the thoughts that you have or the things going on to your body in response, that's your stress reaction. So as I use those different terms, keep that in mind. Overall, when short-lived or if viewed as a challenge, stress can actually be pretty positive. It can help you perform well as your body becomes super aroused and focused. It can motivate you to get off your butt and get something done to solve a problem perhaps. But if it's prolonged stress, especially chronic, we use that term chronic for long-term stress, or threatening, it can actually be harmful to your mental state and specifically to your body. So stress is real and can really affect you. But it's all based on how you appraise it and how long it lasts. So there are 4 components that go into your stress response. We have them in a list in our notes, but there's really no particular order. So one part of it is the cognitive appraisal, that logic-based point where you have to identify what's the threat, what's the stressful thing, what am I going to do about it? So that logic piece. But then there's also the subjective piece, and that's your emotions. Like, how do you feel about this? Is this something that makes you sad or angry or worried? What's your physiological response? In other words, what's your body's reaction? Whether or not you can control that, perhaps you can influence with biofeedback. You can feel yourself getting stressed and you can try to do some slow breathing to slow it down. Or maybe your heart rate's going up, your breathing's going up, and there's nothing you can do about it because it's your body's automatic reactions. And then the behavior. What are the actions that you're taking because of the stress? Is it something healthy like going for a run or studying hard to tackle the problem if it's a school-related problem? Or is it like you're turning to alcohol or junk food? Okay, so what's the behavior? All 4 of these things happen in relation to all sources of stress. Some are easily solved and some are not. Some are harmless and some are extremely harmful. So it kind of comes down to that word appraisal again. How you appraise that stressor. Let's say it's a tough math test and you could put the word stressor with this box here. That stressor happens. You perhaps have a tough math test. If you appraise it as a threat, something that is beyond your abilities or is going to be impossible or is going to destroy your grade and you're going to get in trouble at home and the effects are just going to be far-reaching, chances are you're going to be just stressed to distraction and it's going to affect other things in your life and it's going to affect your performance on the original stressor. But if you view it as a challenge, I just got to get down to it, study, ask for help, study with friends, and I can overcome this tough math test. Then you're more likely to still have a body reaction, but it's going to be more of an aroused, alert state that helps you be focused and on target. And really, these things I'm talking about could be applied to anything that we encounter in life and anything we encounter in psychology. Because we have to have that cognitive moment of what is this, what's happening, what can I do about it? You probably have emotions and feelings that come along with it. You might have, I'm missing one, your body's going to respond to everything you face, and then your behavior is going to change in relation to all of those factors. Okay, so this is a good moment to remind yourself that stress can be really useful. And those released hormones of like adrenaline and cortisols, which we'll talk about again in a couple minutes, can actually be channeled into good instead of evil and can really benefit you to be at your peak performance, to build resilience. It can trigger your immune system to respond stronger if it needs to. There are 3 types of stressors that psychologists have developed, 3 categories. The first one is a catastrophic event. So these are sudden, unexpected, potentially life-threatening experiences or traumas. Feel free to shorten that up. Some of that feels slightly redundant. But these are things that affect not just you, but perhaps your whole community and can linger, have lingering effects. So something like a terrorist attack or a natural disaster or a pandemic. After 9/11, there was a 58% of Americans claimed that they were experiencing greater than average anxiety or heightened arousal. I think we've seen the same with the COVID pandemic, where people are constantly on alert for the danger they're putting to their own bodies and that of those around them by potentially leaving their house. So these are events that affect pretty much the entire community and might have that initial reaction of extreme fear, extreme stress, extreme arousal, but then can also have lingering effects and kind of have ripple effects throughout someone's community. And then we also have life changes or personal strains, and these situations create demands to which people must adjust. So even if there's a terrorist attack that's not in your community or you're not really directly affected by COVID, that's not so much what I'm talking about. Here I'm talking about the things that definitely affect you. Something like the passing of a loved one, a breakup of a relationship, or potentially a divorce in your family, a friend moving away, or just missing out on something, a goal that you've been working for and you realize you can't achieve it anymore. So these are the sorts of things that affect you personally and probably your immediate circle. And even positive things like graduating or moving to college, those can also be stressors. So they don't necessarily have to be negative things, but they can still stress your body out. Daily hassles are obviously the most common because they occur daily. These are those small irritations, pressures, annoyances that don't seem like that big of a deal taken alone, but add up. So if you're dealing with forgetting your homework and having to pay your cell phone bill and you're fighting with your sibling and now you have to go to that class you don't like, these all might feel really small and manageable taken by themselves, but they add up. And quite frankly, these are the things that are probably most likely to hurt your physical being. And so we're going to get into next how our body responds to stress. And there are 2 theories in how this happens. The first one is the stress response system. And this was developed by Cannon, the same Cannon of Cannon and Bard from our emotional theories. And if you recall, he's the person who coined the fight or flight response. And this is when your sympathetic nervous system kicks you into high gear and your body has to respond to a threat right now. So your hypothalamus and pituitary glands are triggering your adrenal glands. In the fast reactions, epinephrine, norepinephrine, adrenaline, these things are being released to increase your heart rate, increase your entire cardiovascular system, your blood flow, like your blood pressure, maybe makes you able to run really fast to get away from something. But all of those, your digestion is slowing down, your pupils are dilating, all of those things we talked about with the sympathetic nervous system. Your slow response is based on the release of glucocorticoids, also known as cortisol. And these are the hormones that stay in your body and kind of linger even after that initial threat, that keeps you aroused or alert even when you don't realize it. And it kind of maintains that high level of stress, even if you think you're coping. Hans Selye developed the general adaptation syndrome theory, which is the idea that all people respond to all stress in 3 phases, but that perhaps the intensity varies based on what the stress is and how long it lasts. So whether or not the stressor can be taken away. So it's a 3-stage pattern of responses that is triggered by the effort to adapt to any stressor. Okay. Take a quick look at this graph. I'm going to go through each stage individually, but basically this line is referring to the ways that your body specifically is adapting. In stage 1, this is the alarm stage or the alarm reaction stage. And this is when your hypothalamus is triggering that fight or flight sympathetic nervous system response. The increased breathing, the increased heart rate, your pupils are dilating, digestion is slowing. Remember that? Our body stops digesting because it's worrying about, it's sending resources to other parts of your body. If the stress does not go away or overwhelms your body can become distressed and can actually start to break down a little bit. You might have headaches. You might have a sudden heart attack, but that usually comes from more prolonged stress, but it could happen as an alarm response. You could faint from shock. Okay, so different things can happen to you if that stressor becomes overwhelming. Stage 2 is the resistance stage, and this is when your body seems to be coping on the outside. It seems like you're rebounding, you're calming down, or at least it appears that way, that your body is resisting the stressor. But in actuality, inwardly, your body is fighting to restore homeostasis. Your temperature, your body temperature still might be raised. Your blood pressure might be up. Your respiration might still be high. Your adrenal glands are still pumping hormones into your body, but on the outside, it seems like you're coping. The problem is that this is all based on one stressor. So if you add on another stressor, this is going to all get worse. Or if you cannot seem to handle the initial stressor, your body is going to use up all of its energy fighting the stress. So then what happens? Exhaustion. If the stressor is not removed, the body becomes very vulnerable to illness to the point where you could die. Like you could actually die from too much of a prolonged chronic stress condition. That's pretty rare. What's more common are signs like a heart attack, getting sick more often, getting frequent headaches or even muscle aches. If you think about devoting yourself to studying too much and you're studying and doing all of these things all week long and then on test day you feel miserable and you get a sore throat. That's your body reacting to stress. So why does that happen? It has to do with your immune system. Stress itself does not cause your illness. It makes your immune system, or it makes you more vulnerable to illness. The immune system is designed to deal with short-term stressors, but when stress is chronic, it can weaken your overall immune system because there's no actual physical enemy for it to fight. It's looking for these cells or these illnesses to go after. But if it's just stress, it's going to kind of start attacking you. That sounds awful, but your body becomes vulnerable to infection and injury. If you think about it, when someone has a wound, it actually heals slower in a stressed out person, or someone who is stressed becomes more vulnerable to colds because of this constant release of stress hormones. Those hormones can trigger heart disease, high blood pressure, and overall immune suppression. What I mean by that is the suppression of or the weakened response of white blood cells, or even just a lower number of white blood cells. And those are your lymphocytes. These are the things in your body that fight off colds, that fight off infections, that fight off the flu. And so if you're highly stressed, the stress is not making you sick, but it's taking up the energy and some of your body's resources to be able to fight off those things, resulting in you potentially becoming sick or developing an infection if you're too stressed. Furthermore, our actual behavioral choices, never mind what's happening inside of our body, our behavioral choices to cope with stress can often lead to unhealthy choices that affect the health of our overall body. So when we are stressed out, we often turn to things like caffeine, smoking, drinking, other types of drugs. We might get less sleep because we're tossing and turning, or because we've consumed some of these other things. We might turn to fast food or high caloric and high fat food because it makes us temporarily feel good. But overall, that's still damaging and can still hurt your body. Our personality types can also lead us to experience greater or lesser amounts of stress. If you are a type A personality, what that means is that you are probably competitive, impatient, maybe aggressive or quick to anger. This is the type of personality that becomes stressed out very, very quickly and is at a higher risk for coronary heart disease. Specifically because our sympathetic nervous system redistributes our blood flow to respond to our body's stressors and doesn't necessarily do a great job of routing blood to things like our liver to remove cholesterol and fat from our blood, and then things that are necessary to keep our heart healthy. So again, our resources in our body are being sent to different body systems than what it should normally be doing, increasing our vulnerability to other diseases. If you are a type B personality, this is someone who's typically easygoing and very relaxed and doesn't get too anxious or worked up about much of anything. And I wish I was that person, but I am not. But lucky for us, we are in psychology class and we can learn some coping strategies. The most useful coping strategy is the problem-focused coping strategy. And this one works to reduce stress by changing the actual event or changing your reaction to stress. So this is when you feel in control of a situation and you can do something about it. So let's say your car keeps breaking down, causing you stress, having to make appointments to get it fixed, find the money to get it fixed, possibly even being late to work or school when it's not fixed. So you address the actual problem and you buy a new car. Are there other stressors wrapped up into that? Of course, but it's something you can take action on. The other way you can cope is emotion-focused coping. And this is when you can't change the event. There's no way around it. And so instead of doing something to change the problem, the stressor, you start attending to your own emotional needs. So this is more when you feel out of control and you're trying to regain a little bit of control by just focusing on what you need to do to feel better. So if you break up with your boyfriend or girlfriend, and this might cause you stress, maybe you seek support from family and friends. Or maybe you go for that chocolate peanut butter ice cream, but that could cause other health problems. So don't do that too much. So we will address some other experiments and specifics with coping and stress, but that is it for this lecture.